Welcome to deep science sleep. Picture yourself lying in a quiet meadow beneath a vast, star-filled sky. The grass beneath you is soft and cool, releasing the gentle scent of earth and wildflowers with each slow breath you take. Above, countless stars shimmer like distant thoughts, each one a piece of knowledge, a fragment of understanding waiting to be discovered. The night air wraps around you like a blanket, and you feel yourself sinking deeper into the ground, becoming one with the earth below. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the universe itself. In this moment, you are perfectly still, perfectly safe, perfectly ready to drift into the fascinating realm of intelligence in all its forms. Let your mind wander now through these gentle facts, each one a stepping stone into the most peaceful sleep you've ever known. What intelligence really means. When we think about intelligence, most of us imagine someone solving complex mathematical equations or reading encyclopedias for fun. But intelligence, in its truest form, is so much more beautiful and varied than a single definition could ever capture. It's a concept that has occupied the minds of philosophers, scientists, and thinkers for thousands of years. And even today, we're still discovering new dimensions of what it means to be intelligent. The word intelligence itself comes from the Latin intelligentia, meaning understanding or comprehension. But this simple etymology belies the incredible complexity of what we're trying to describe. Ancient Greek philosophers like Plato believed intelligence was tied to the soul's ability to grasp eternal truths. Aristotle, his student, took a more practical view, suggesting that intelligence involved the capacity to learn from experience and adapt behavior accordingly. These early perspectives set the stage for centuries of debate about whether intelligence was a single, unified ability or a collection of different skills working together. In the early 20th century, psychologists began attempting to measure intelligence more systematically. French psychologist Alfred Binet developed one of the first intelligence tests in 1905, not to rank children by innate ability, but to identify those who might need additional educational support. His work laid the foundation for what would become the IQ test, a tool that has been both celebrated and criticized over the decades. The IQ test measures certain types of cognitive abilities, logical reasoning, mathematical skill, verbal comprehension, and spatial visualization. But many researchers now recognize that this captures only a narrow slice of human intelligence. One of the most influential expansions of intelligence theory came from psychologist Howard Gardner in 1983. Gardner proposed the theory of multiple intelligences, suggesting that humans possess at least 8 distinct types of intelligence. These include linguistic intelligence, the ability to use words effectively; logical mathematical intelligence, the capacity for scientific and mathematical thinking; spatial intelligence, the skill to perceive the visual world accurately; musical intelligence, sensitivity to rhythm, pitch, and melody; bodily kinesthetic intelligence, the ability to use one's body skillfully; interpersonal intelligence, the capacity to understand and interact effectively with others; intrapersonal intelligence, self-awareness and understanding of one's own emotions; and naturalistic intelligence, the ability to recognize and categorize patterns in nature. Gardner's theory was revolutionary because it validated forms of intelligence that traditional education systems had often overlooked. The gifted dancer, the empathetic counselor, the skilled carpenter. all possessed forms of intelligence as valuable and sophisticated as those of the mathematician or linguist. This perspective shift has profound implications for how we understand human potential and design educational experiences. Around the same time, psychologist Robert Sternberg proposed his triarchic theory of intelligence, which identified three key components: analytical intelligence, the ability to analyze and evaluate ideas and solve problems; creative intelligence, the capacity to create, invent, and discover; and practical intelligence, the skill to adapt to changing environments and manage everyday tasks. Sternberg argued that successful intelligence required a balance of all three types, not just excellence in analytical thinking. Cultural perspectives add yet another layer of complexity to our understanding of intelligence. What counts as intelligent behavior varies significantly across different societies. In Western cultures, intelligence is often associated with quick thinking, individual achievement, and abstract reasoning. In many Eastern cultures, wisdom, which includes social harmony, emotional regulation, and moral judgment, is considered equally or more important. Some indigenous cultures emphasize intelligence as it relates to environmental knowledge, understanding seasonal patterns, and maintaining balance within ecosystems. The neuroscience of intelligence has revealed fascinating patterns in how our brains create cognitive ability. For decades, researchers searched for a single intelligence center in the brain, but we now know that intelligence emerges from complex networks of regions working together. The prefrontal cortex, located at the front of the brain, plays a crucial role in executive functions like planning, decision-making, and working memory. The parietal lobes help with spatial reasoning and mathematical thinking. The temporal lobes are involved in language comprehension and memory formation. But intelligence isn't just about which brain regions you have. It's about how efficiently they communicate with each other. Studies using functional brain imaging have shown that more intelligent individuals often display more efficient brain activity. Rather than working harder, their brains work smarter, recruiting only the neural resources necessary for a task and showing less overall activation. This efficiency appears to result from stronger connections between distant brain regions and more refined neural networks that have been shaped by experience and learning. Interestingly, intelligence isn't just about having a big brain. While brain size correlates modestly with intelligence, the relationship is far from perfect. Some of the most intelligent animals have relatively small brains, and within human populations, brain size explains only a small portion of variation in cognitive ability. What matters more is the organization of the brain, the number of neurons, the density of connections between them, and the way information flows through neural networks. One of the most important discoveries in intelligence research is the concept of fluid and crystallized intelligence, proposed by psychologist Raymond Cattell. Fluid intelligence is the capacity to think logically and solve novel problems independent of acquired knowledge. It's what allows you to recognize patterns, think abstractly, and adapt to new situations. Crystallized intelligence, on the other hand, is the knowledge and skills you've accumulated through experience and education. It's your vocabulary, your understanding of how the world works, your expertise in your profession. These two types of intelligence follow different trajectories across the lifespan. Fluid intelligence tends to peak in early adulthood and gradually decline with age. But crystallized intelligence continues to grow throughout life as we accumulate more knowledge and experience. This is why older adults, despite sometimes experiencing slower processing speeds, often excel at tasks requiring wisdom, expertise, and nuanced judgment. The elderly professor may take longer to learn new technology, but their depth of understanding in their field is unmatched. Another crucial aspect of intelligence is processing speed, how quickly your brain can perform basic cognitive operations. Think of it as your mental metabolism. People with faster processing speeds can handle more information in the same amount of time, which contributes to higher performance on many cognitive tasks. However, processing speed isn't everything. Sometimes slower, more deliberate thinking leads to better solutions, especially for complex problems that benefit from careful consideration. Working memory, the ability to hold and manipulate information in your mind temporarily, is another key component of intelligence. When you're doing mental math, following complex instructions, or comprehending a long sentence, you're using working memory. Research has shown that working memory capacity correlates strongly with general intelligence and academic achievement. People with larger working memory capacities can hold more information in mind simultaneously, which helps them see connections, understand relationships, and solve complex problems. But perhaps the most beautiful thing about intelligence is its malleability. For many years, people believed intelligence was fixed. You were born with a certain level, and that was that. Modern neuroscience has thoroughly debunked this myth. Through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, we can actually change our cognitive abilities throughout our lives. Learning new skills, challenging yourself mentally, staying physically active, and maintaining social connections all support cognitive development and help maintain intelligence as we age. The concept of emotional intelligence, popularized by psychologist Daniel Goleman in the 1990s, added yet another dimension to our understanding. Emotional intelligence involves recognizing, understanding, and managing your own emotions, as well as recognizing and influencing the emotions of others. This type of intelligence is crucial for leadership, teamwork, conflict resolution, and personal well-being, yet it isn't captured by traditional intelligence tests. People with high emotional intelligence navigate social situations gracefully, build strong relationships, and maintain better mental health. As we drift deeper into relaxation, consider this: intelligence isn't a competition or a ranking. It's not a single number that defines your worth. Intelligence is the beautiful, diverse, ever-changing capacity of minds, human and otherwise, to understand, adapt, create, and flourish in the world. It's the crow remembering your face years after a single encounter, the tree sharing nutrients with its neighbors through underground networks, the infant learning language at an astonishing pace, and the elder whose life experience allows them to see patterns others miss. Intelligence is everywhere, in countless forms, a testament to the extraordinary nature of consciousness itself. The animal kingdom's brilliant minds. As you continue to relax, let your mind wander into the natural world, where intelligence takes forms we're only beginning to understand. The animal kingdom is filled with creatures whose cognitive abilities challenge our assumptions about what it means to be smart. These aren't just instinctive behaviors programmed into their brains. These are flexible, creative, problem-solving minds at work. Let's begin with the corvids, the family of birds that includes crows, ravens, jays, and magpies. These birds have become celebrities in the scientific world for their remarkable intelligence. Their brains, though no larger than a walnut, are packed with neurons at a density similar to primates. In fact, corvids have about 1.5 billion neurons, comparable to some monkey species. This dense packing of neurons allows for rapid communication between brain cells and sophisticated information processing. Crows are perhaps the most well-studied corvids, and their abilities are nothing short of astonishing. They can recognize individual human faces and remember them for years. In one famous study at the University of Washington, researchers wore distinctive masks while capturing and banding wild crows. The crows remembered these masks and scolded the researchers aggressively whenever they wore them, even years later. But here's where it gets truly remarkable. Crows that had never been captured themselves learned to recognize and avoid the threatening masks just by observing the reactions of their fellow crows. This demonstrates social learning and cultural transmission of information. New Caledonian crows, found on the islands of New Caledonia in the South Pacific, are master tool users. They don't just use tools they find, they actually manufacture them with careful precision. These crows fashion hooks from twigs and leaves, stripping away excess material to create the perfect shape for extracting insects from tree bark and crevices. They'll test different tools, selecting the right one for the job, and they can even make compound tools by combining different elements. This level of tool manufacture was once thought to be unique to humans and our closest primate relatives. Ravens, the largest members of the corvid family, display an even broader range of cognitive abilities. They can plan for the future, a skill once considered exclusively human. In laboratory experiments, ravens learned to save specific tools that they would need hours later for a task, demonstrating that they could mentally project themselves into the future and prepare accordingly. They also understand basic physics, showing knowledge of concepts like water displacement. When presented with a tall tube partially filled with water with a floating food reward just out of reach, ravens dropped stones into the tube to raise the water level, just like Aesop's fabled crow. Ravens are also deeply social creatures with complex communication systems. They have different calls for different situations, warning calls for predators, assembly calls to bring the group together, and even specific calls that seem to refer to particular individuals. Young ravens engage in play behavior, suggesting they have a sense of fun and perhaps even humor. They'll slide down snow-covered slopes repeatedly, ride on the backs of other animals, and play tug-of-war with objects, all behaviors that serve no immediate survival purpose but seem to be done purely for enjoyment. The social cognition of corvids is particularly impressive. They understand what others can and cannot see, a theory of mind that requires recognizing that others have different perspectives. In caching experiments, ravens that were themselves thieves were more likely to hide their food caches when they thought they were being watched, but only if the potential observer was another raven. They seemed to understand that other ravens might steal from them because they themselves would steal in the same situation. This kind of perspective-taking is remarkably sophisticated. Now, let's shift our attention to the ocean, where intelligence evolved along a completely different path. The octopus is one of the most alien forms of intelligence on our planet. These creatures are mollusks, more closely related to snails and clams than to any intelligent vertebrate. Yet they possess cognitive abilities that rival those of many mammals. An octopus has 9 brains, a central brain and 8 mini-brains, one in each arm. But here's the truly mind-bending part. About 2/3 of an octopus's neurons are located in its arms, not in its central brain. Each arm can taste, touch, and move independently, gathering information and solving problems on its own, while the central brain handles overall coordination. It's a form of distributed intelligence that's utterly unlike our own centralized system. Octopuses are master problem solvers. In laboratory settings, they've learned to open jars by unscrewing the lids, a task that requires understanding of how threaded connections work. They can navigate mazes, distinguish between different shapes and patterns, and remember solutions to problems for months. They're also escape artists extraordinaire. There are numerous accounts of octopuses in aquariums figuring out how to open their tanks, slithering across the floor, and either escaping entirely or infiltrating other tanks to hunt the fish inside. One particularly famous octopus named Inky lived at the National Aquarium of New Zealand until one night in 2016, when he made a daring escape. Inky squeezed out of his tank through a small opening at the top, crawled across the floor to a drain pipe, and made his way through approximately 50 meters of pipe into the ocean. The feat demonstrated spatial memory, problem-solving, and sheer determination. Tool use in octopuses has been observed in the wild. The veined octopus, found in Indonesia, collects coconut shell halves from the ocean floor. It carries these shells underneath its body, walking on its arm tips in an awkward stilt-like manner. When threatened by predators, it quickly assembles the shells around itself, creating an instant shelter. This behavior meets the scientific definition of tool use. The animal is carrying an object with no immediate benefit, because it will be useful later. Perhaps most remarkably, octopuses can camouflage themselves with stunning precision and speed. They can match complex backgrounds, mimicking the color, pattern, and even texture of their surroundings in less than a second. What makes this even more astonishing is that octopuses are likely colorblind. They seem to sense the colors and patterns of their environment through their skin, which contains the same light-sensitive proteins found in their eyes. This is intelligence distributed throughout the body in the most literal sense. Elephants represent yet another peak of animal intelligence. These gentle giants have the largest brains of any land animal, weighing about 5 kilograms, 3 times the size of a human brain. Their temporal lobes, the brain regions associated with memory processing, are proportionally larger and more convoluted than those of humans. The saying, "an elephant never forgets," has real scientific backing. Elephants have remarkable long-term memory. They can remember other elephants, both friends and foes, for decades. They remember the locations of water sources over vast distances and can navigate to them even during severe droughts, sometimes traveling to places they haven't visited in years. Matriarchs, the oldest females who lead elephant herds, serve as walking libraries of ecological knowledge, guiding their groups to food and water based on decades of accumulated experience. Elephants show clear signs of empathy and emotional intelligence. They mourn their dead, returning to the bones of deceased family members and gently touching them with their trunks. They've been observed trying to help injured companions, supporting them physically or protecting them from danger. When one elephant in a herd is in distress, others respond with comforting behaviors, touching the distressed individual gently with their trunks and emitting soft rumbling vocalizations. Their communication system is remarkably sophisticated. Elephants produce sounds across a wide range of frequencies, including infrasound calls below the range of human hearing. These low-frequency calls can travel for several kilometers, allowing elephants to maintain contact with distant herd members. They also communicate through seismic vibrations, feeling ground tremors through sensitive pads in their feet. By creating and detecting these vibrations, elephants can hear through their feet and coordinate movements with other herds far away. Elephants also use tools in creative ways. They'll strip bark from trees to use as fly swatters, plug up water holes with chewed bark to keep the water clean, and drop large rocks or logs on electric fences to break them. Some elephants have learned to throw dirt on electric fences to test if they're active before attempting to cross. In captivity, elephants have been observed using sticks to scratch hard-to-reach places and even stacking boxes to reach food placed out of reach. Dolphins, those playful marine mammals, possess intelligence that in some ways rivals our own. Their brains are larger than human brains and have more convoluted cortexes, suggesting high cognitive complexity. The ratio of brain size to body size in dolphins is second only to humans among animals. Dolphins are self-aware. They recognize themselves in mirrors, an ability shared only by great apes, elephants, and a few other species. In mirror tests, dolphins will examine marks on their bodies that they can only see in a reflection, demonstrating that they understand the image is themselves. This self-recognition suggests a level of consciousness and self-concept that was once thought unique to humans. Their communication abilities are extraordinary. Each dolphin has a unique signature whistle, essentially a name that identifies them individually. Dolphins use these signature whistles to call to each other, and they remember the whistles of individual dolphins they've met even after decades of separation. They also demonstrate understanding of grammar and syntax in their vocalizations, capable of comprehending not just individual words but the order in which they're presented. Dolphins hunt cooperatively using sophisticated strategies. In some populations, they've learned to drive fish into shallow water or against barriers, taking turns feeding while others maintain the formation. In Shark Bay, Australia, some dolphins use marine sponges as tools, placing them over their rostrums to protect their sensitive noses while foraging along the rough ocean floor. This behavior is passed down through maternal teaching, creating distinct cultural traditions within dolphin communities. Finally, let's consider the great apes. Gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, and orangutans are closest living relatives. These animals share approximately 98% of our DNA, and their cognitive abilities blur the line between human and animal intelligence. Chimpanzees are master tool users. They don't just use one tool, they use tool sets, combining multiple implements to solve complex problems. They fashion spears by breaking off branches and sharpening the points with their teeth, then use these spears to hunt small mammals hiding in tree hollows. They use stone hammers and anvils to crack nuts, selecting the right size and weight of stones for different types of nuts. Young chimpanzees learn these skills by watching their mothers, and different chimpanzee communities have different tool-using traditions, demonstrating cultural variation. Chimpanzees also engage in tactical deception, suggesting they understand that others have minds that can be misled. They'll lead others away from food sources and circle back when alone to retrieve the food. They form alliances and coalitions, negotiating social relationships with remarkable sophistication. Male chimpanzees engage in power struggles, but these aren't just about physical strength. They require social intelligence, the ability to form coalitions, offer support, and remember past favors. Bonobos, sometimes called pygmy chimpanzees, are equally intelligent but more peaceful. They've learned to use symbols to communicate with humans, pressing keys on computer keyboards to indicate their desires, and even combining symbols to create new meanings. Kanzi, a famous bonobo, can understand more than 3,000 spoken English words and communicate using several hundred symbols. He learned not through direct training but by observing lessons given to his mother, demonstrating the powerful role of observational learning in bonobo cognition. Orangutans are known for their remarkable intelligence and ingenuity. In the rainforests of Borneo and Sumatra, they've been observed using leaves as umbrellas during rain, fashioning gloves from leaves to handle spiny fruit, and using sticks to extract insects from tree holes. Some orangutans have learned to whistle by manipulating their lips, mimicking sounds they heard from human workers in the forest. In captivity, orangutans have solved complex puzzles, planned their actions several steps ahead, and even learned to use vending machines by trading tokens for food rewards. Gorillas, the largest primates, are gentle and intelligent. Coco, a lowland gorilla who lived from 1971 to 2018, learned to use over 1,000 signs in American Sign Language and understood approximately 2,000 spoken English words. While the extent of her language abilities remains debated, there's no doubt that she could express desires, describe emotions, and even create novel sign combinations to describe new objects. What unites all these intelligent animals is cognitive flexibility. The ability to adapt behavior to new situations, learn from experience, and solve novel problems. They don't just follow instinct. They think, they remember, they plan, and they learn. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the vast network of minds across our planet, each experiencing the world in their own unique way, solving the challenges their environments present, and enriching the beautiful diversity of intelligence on Earth. Intelligence in unexpected places. Now, let your mind settle into an even deeper state of calm as we explore intelligence in places we might never have thought to look. Not all intelligence requires a brain, at least not in the way we usually understand it. Some of the most fascinating forms of intelligence exist in organisms so different from us that recognizing their cognitive abilities requires us to expand our very definition of what it means to think. Plants, those silent green beings we often take for granted, possess a form of intelligence that challenges our assumptions about consciousness and cognition. They can't run from danger or fight back in obvious ways, yet they've survived and thrived on Earth for over 450 million years. How? Through an elegant form of intelligence distributed throughout their bodies. Plants can sense their environment in remarkable ways. They detect light not just through specialized cells in their leaves, but through receptors throughout their entire structure. They can sense the direction, intensity, and even the specific wavelengths of light, adjusting their growth accordingly. If you place a plant near a window, it will grow toward the light, but this isn't just a simple mechanical response. The plant is constantly sampling the light environment, comparing the information from different parts of its body, and making decisions about where to allocate resources. Touch is another sense that plants possess. When something brushes against a plant's leaves, it can detect and remember the contact. The sensitive plant, Mimosa pudica, will fold its leaves when touched, a rapid response that protects it from potential herbivores. But even plants without such dramatic reactions can sense and respond to touch. Repeated gentle touching of a plant can cause it to grow shorter and stockier, a response that helps it withstand wind. Plants can also hear or at least detect vibrations. Research has shown that plants exposed to the sound of caterpillars munching on leaves produce higher levels of defensive chemicals, even if the caterpillars aren't actually touching them. The vibrations from chewing trigger a defensive response. Even stranger, some plants can produce clicking sounds at frequencies below human hearing, though what these sounds communicate, if anything, remains a mystery. Perhaps most fascinating is the underground communication network that connects plants, the mycorrhizal network, sometimes called the Wood Wide Web. This network is formed by fungi that colonize plant roots. The fungal threads, called hyphae, extend far into the soil, connecting different plants together. Through these connections, plants can share resources and information. When a tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical warning signals through the mycorrhizal network to neighboring trees. These neighbors, receiving the warning, begin producing defensive compounds before the insects even reach them. It's an early warning system that operates through underground fungal highways. The fungi act as intermediaries, sometimes even redistributing resources from healthy trees to sick ones, though they also take their cut as payment for their services. Mother trees, the largest and oldest trees in a forest, play a special role in these networks. Through mycorrhizal connections, they can recognize their own offspring and preferentially share carbon and nutrients with their young. They support the growth of seedlings that would otherwise struggle in the deep shade of the forest floor. Even as a mother tree dies, it passes resources to its descendants through the network, providing a final gift that helps ensure the forest's future. This network isn't always harmonious. Plants can also engage in chemical warfare through the soil, releasing toxins that inhibit the growth of competitors. Some species are cheaters that take nutrients through the mycorrhizal network without reciprocating. But overall, the system demonstrates sophisticated information processing and resource management that occurs without a central nervous system or brain. Slime molds, despite their name, are neither molds nor fungi. They're single-celled organisms that can form massive multinucleated structures, sometimes covering several square feet. But don't let their simple structure fool you. Slime molds can solve complex problems in surprisingly efficient ways. In one famous experiment, scientists placed a slime mold at the center of a maze with food sources at various points. The slime mold initially sent out tendrils in all directions, exploring the entire maze. But over time, it pruned away the unnecessary connections, maintaining only the most efficient paths between the food sources. It had effectively solved the maze. Even more impressive, when scientists placed food sources in positions matching the locations of major cities around Tokyo, the slime mold created a network connecting them that remarkably resembled the actual Tokyo rail system, one of the most efficient rail networks in the world, designed by human engineers over decades. The slime mold arrived at a similar solution through simple biological rules, demonstrating that intelligence doesn't always require complex thought. Slime molds can also learn and remember, despite having no brain. When exposed to unpleasant but harmless substances at regular intervals, they initially react defensively but eventually learn the timing and stop responding. This is habituation, a form of learning that shows they can adapt their behavior based on experience. They can even pass this memory on when cells fuse, sharing learned information between individuals. Fungi themselves demonstrate intelligence in their own right. A fungal colony, spreading through soil or decaying wood, must make constant decisions about where to allocate resources. When part of a fungal network finds rich nutrients, the entire colony redirects growth toward that area. When pathways prove inefficient, they're abandoned. The network optimizes itself continuously, balancing exploration of new areas with exploitation of known resources. Some fungi also manipulate the behavior of other organisms in ways that seem almost diabolically clever. The Ophiocordyceps fungus infects ants, taking control of their nervous systems. The infected ant leaves its colony, climbs to a high point on a plant stem, and clamps down with its jaws in a location that's optimal for the fungus to spread its spores. The ant dies, and the fungus fruits from its body, releasing spores that will infect other ants. The fungus has effectively hijacked the ant's brain and behavior for its own reproductive purposes. Even bacteria, the simplest life forms, show forms of collective intelligence. While individual bacteria are simple, colonies can solve complex problems through quorum sensing, the ability to detect how many of their fellows are nearby. When enough bacteria are present, they coordinate their behavior, acting as a unified group. They can form biofilms, structured communities that are much more resistant to antibiotics than individual cells. Some species form spores only when the colony reaches a certain density, ensuring survival through difficult conditions. Bacteria also share information through horizontal gene transfer, passing useful genes like antibiotic resistance between individuals and even between species. This sharing of genetic information allows bacterial populations to adapt to new challenges with remarkable speed, a kind of distributed intelligence operating at the genetic level. What all these organisms share is the ability to process information, adapt to their environment, and solve problems, even without neurons or brains. They remind us that intelligence is not a single phenomenon but a diverse set of strategies that life has evolved to cope with the challenges of existence. The tree reaching its roots toward water, the slime mold optimizing its network, the bacterium coordinating with its colony. All are forms of intelligence, different from ours but no less remarkable. As you sink deeper into relaxation, consider how intelligence permeates the living world in countless forms. It's in the chemical conversations between plant roots and fungal partners, in the collective decisions of bacterial colonies, in the problem-solving networks of brainless slime. Intelligence is not the exclusive property of big-brained animals. It's a fundamental characteristic of life itself, a manifestation of the universe's tendency toward complexity, organization, and adaptation. Let this thought comfort you as you drift closer to sleep, knowing that intelligence surrounds you in countless quiet forms, from the smallest bacteria to the largest tree. The human brain's fascinating capabilities. Now, let your awareness turn inward to the 3-pound universe inside your own skull. The human brain is perhaps the most complex structure we know of in the entire universe, and its capabilities are both humbling and awe-inspiring. Your brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each one a tiny processor connected to thousands of other neurons. If you tried to count every neuron in your brain at 1 per second, it would take you nearly 3,000 years. But neurons are only part of the story. For every neuron, there are about as many glial cells. Support cells that were once thought to be merely structural, but are now known to play crucial roles in information processing, immune function, and regulation of neural activity. The connections between neurons, called synapses, number in the hundreds of trillions. It's through these synapses that information flows, creating the basis for everything you think, feel, remember, and experience. Each synapse can strengthen or weaken over time, adjusting the flow of information through neural networks. This process, called synaptic plasticity, is the physical basis of learning and memory. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, is one of its most remarkable features. For centuries, scientists believed that the adult brain was fixed and unchangeable. We now know this is utterly false. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences, thoughts, and behaviors. When you learn a new skill, your brain physically changes. New connections form between neurons, existing connections strengthen, and in some cases, entirely new neurons are born. This process happens throughout your entire life, though it's most dramatic in childhood. A baby's brain forms new synapses at an astonishing rate, about 700 per second in the first few years of life. This explosive growth creates far more connections than will ultimately be needed. Through a process called synaptic pruning, unused connections are eliminated while frequently used connections are preserved and strengthened. It's a use-it-or-lose-it principle that shapes the developing brain according to the child's experiences and environment. But neuroplasticity doesn't stop in childhood. Adult brains continue to adapt and change. When you learn to play a musical instrument, the brain regions controlling your fingers physically expand. When London taxi drivers memorize the city's complex street network, their hippocampus, a brain region crucial for spatial memory, grows larger. When blind individuals learn to read Braille, the brain regions normally dedicated to visual processing are recruited for touch sensation. This plasticity is what allows recovery from brain injury. When one part of the brain is damaged, other regions can sometimes take over its functions. Stroke patients who lose speech abilities can, through intensive therapy, regain language by recruiting new brain areas to handle communication. This reorganization takes time and effort, but the fact that it's possible at all demonstrates the brain's remarkable flexibility. Memory is one of the brain's most mysterious and essential functions. Your memories make you who you are. They connect your past self to your present self and allow you to project into the future. But memory isn't a single thing. Neuroscientists distinguish between different types of memory, each involving different brain systems. Working memory is your mental workspace, where you hold and manipulate information temporarily. When you're trying to remember a phone number long enough to dial it, or following multi-step instructions, you're using working memory. It's limited in capacity. Most people can hold about 7 pieces of information in working memory at once, but it's crucial for reasoning, learning, and comprehension. The prefrontal cortex, at the very front of your brain, is central to working memory function. Short-term memory extends a bit longer than working memory, lasting from seconds to hours. It's the memory of what you had for breakfast this morning or what your colleague mentioned in a meeting earlier today. But for memories to persist beyond a few hours, they must undergo consolidation, a process that transforms them into long-term memories. Long-term memory can last from days to a lifetime. It includes explicit memories, things you can consciously recall like facts and personal experiences, and implicit memories like motor skills and habits that you've learned so thoroughly they've become automatic. Explicit memory relies heavily on the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain's temporal lobe. The hippocampus acts like a librarian, helping to encode new memories and retrieving old ones. But the memories themselves aren't stored in the hippocampus. They're distributed throughout the cortex, with different aspects of a memory stored in the brain regions that originally processed that type of information. Sleep plays a crucial role in memory consolidation. During sleep, particularly during deep sleep and REM sleep, your brain replays the experiences of the day. This replay strengthens important memories and integrates them with existing knowledge. Neural connections that were formed during waking experience are strengthened during sleep, making memories more stable and accessible. This is why a good night's sleep after studying can dramatically improve your retention of information. Sleep deprivation, conversely, impairs both memory formation and recall. When you're sleep deprived, your hippocampus doesn't function properly, making it difficult to form new memories. Your working memory capacity decreases, attention wavers, and you're more likely to forget information. Even a single night of poor sleep can impair cognitive function the next day. Chronic sleep deprivation can lead to lasting changes in brain structure and function, particularly in the hippocampus, which can actually shrink with prolonged sleep loss. But sleep does more than consolidate memories. It's also when your brain clears out cellular waste products that accumulate during waking hours. A system called the glymphatic system becomes more active during sleep, flushing out toxins including proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease. This suggests that sleep is essential not just for learning and memory but for long-term brain health. Emotional intelligence, often abbreviated as EQ, is another fascinating capability of the human brain. While traditional intelligence focuses on reasoning and problem-solving, emotional intelligence involves understanding and managing emotions, both your own and others. The brain systems underlying emotional intelligence include the amygdala, which processes emotional information, particularly fear and threat, the prefrontal cortex, which regulates emotional responses, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps monitor conflicts between emotional and rational thinking. People with high emotional intelligence are skilled at recognizing their own emotional states, understanding what triggers those emotions, and regulating them appropriately. They're also adept at reading others' emotional cues, facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, and responding with empathy. These skills are crucial for leadership, teamwork, parenting, and maintaining healthy relationships. Research has shown that emotional intelligence can be developed and strengthened. Mindfulness practices, which involve paying attention to present-moment experience without judgment, can enhance emotional awareness and regulation. Cognitive behavioral techniques can help people recognize and modify unhelpful thought patterns that generate negative emotions. Simply learning about emotions, understanding that they arise from brain processes and that you can influence these processes, can empower people to better manage their emotional lives. Creativity is yet another remarkable feature of human intelligence. and it involves some of the most interesting patterns of brain activity. When you're engaged in creative thinking, your brain shows increased communication between networks that usually don't talk much to each other. The default mode network, which is active during daydreaming and mind-wandering, connects with executive control networks involved in focused attention and evaluation. This allows you to generate novel ideas and then assess their value. The most creative moments often occur when you're not trying too hard. This is why solutions to problems often come to us in the shower, on a walk, or right before falling asleep. When you're in a relaxed state, not focused on the problem, your brain can make unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. This is the essence of creativity, linking concepts in ways that produce something new and valuable. Interestingly, creativity seems to benefit from a particular type of brain state, one with just the right amount of activity in certain networks. Too little activity and you can't generate ideas. Too much and you can't break free from conventional thinking. This optimal state, sometimes called flow, is characterized by effortless focus, a loss of self-consciousness, and heightened creativity. Athletes call it being in the zone. Artists speak of being lost in their work. In this state, the prefrontal cortex shows decreased activity, reducing self-criticism and allowing ideas to flow more freely. The brain's visual system alone is a marvel of information processing. About 30% of your cortex is dedicated to vision, more than any other sense. Visual information travels from your eyes to the back of your brain, where it's processed in multiple parallel streams. One stream, the ventral pathway, processes what you're seeing, recognizing objects, faces, colors, and details. Another stream, the dorsal pathway, processes where things are in space and how they're moving, guiding your actions. But here's something that might surprise you. You don't actually see the world as it is. Your brain constructs your visual experience from fragmentary information, filling in gaps and making predictions. The center of your visual field is sharp and detailed, but your peripheral vision is much blurrier than you realize. Your brain creates the illusion of a uniformly sharp visual world by moving your eyes several times per second, taking high-resolution snapshots of different parts of the scene and stitching them together into a coherent whole. You also have a blind spot in each eye where the optic nerve exits the retina. There are no photoreceptors there, so there's no visual information coming from that spot. Yet you never notice these blind spots because your brain fills them in based on surrounding information. Right now, as you read this, there are parts of your visual field where you're literally blind, but your brain is painting over those gaps so seamlessly that you're completely unaware of them. Language is perhaps the most distinctively human cognitive ability. While other animals communicate, human language is unique in its complexity, flexibility, and power to represent abstract ideas. Your brain has specialized regions for language processing. Broca's area, in the left frontal lobe, is crucial for producing speech and constructing grammatically correct sentences. Wernicke's area, in the left temporal lobe, is essential for understanding spoken language. Damage to these regions causes specific types of aphasia, language disorders that impair speaking, understanding, or both. But language isn't just localized to a few regions. Language comprehension involves vast networks spanning much of the brain. Understanding a sentence requires processing sounds, accessing word meanings from memory, parsing grammatical structure, integrating words into meaningful phrases, and connecting the sentence's meaning to your broader knowledge and the current context. All of this happens automatically and in a fraction of a second, so quickly that you're unaware of the complexity involved. The ability to learn language is most robust in early childhood. There's a critical period for language acquisition, roughly from birth to puberty, during which the brain is especially plastic and receptive to linguistic input. Children exposed to language during this period learn it effortlessly and achieve native-like proficiency. Learning a second language after this critical period is still possible but requires more conscious effort and rarely results in the same level of fluency. As you continue to relax, your own brain is shifting into a different state, moving towards sleep. The electrical patterns recorded on an EEG change as you transition from wakefulness to drowsiness to light sleep to deep sleep. Brain waves slow down, becoming larger and more synchronized. During deep sleep, your cortex generates slow oscillations, rhythmic waves that travel across the brain's surface. These slow waves are thought to strengthen synaptic connections and consolidate memories, making deep sleep essential for learning. Then comes REM sleep, when your brain becomes nearly as active as it is when you're awake. Your eyes dart rapidly beneath closed lids, and you experience vivid dreams. During REM sleep, your prefrontal cortex, the region involved in logical thinking and reality testing, is less active. This may explain why dreams can be so bizarre and illogical. Your brain isn't applying its usual critical judgment to what you're experiencing. But REM sleep serves important functions, particularly in emotional processing and creative problem solving. The human brain is not just a computer made of meat. It's a biological organ shaped by millions of years of evolution, refined and specialized for the particular challenges our ancestors faced. It's capable of extraordinary things, creating art, proving mathematical theorems, experiencing love, pondering its own existence. But it's also vulnerable, prone to biases, illusions, and errors. Understanding both its capabilities and limitations helps us appreciate what a remarkable thing it is to be conscious, to think, to experience the world from the inside. As your brain guides you towards sleep right now, it's performing one of its most essential functions: restoring itself, clearing away metabolic waste, consolidating memories, and preparing for tomorrow. Trust in this process. Your brain knows what it needs. Let yourself drift deeper into that restorative state, where intelligence rests and renews itself. Intelligence across human development. The journey of human intelligence through the lifespan is one of continuous change and remarkable development. From the moment we're born, indeed from before birth, our brains are learning, adapting, and growing in ways that shape who we become. Infant intelligence is a marvel that we're only beginning to understand. Newborn babies come into the world with brains that are about 25% the size of adult brains, but those brains are already equipped with impressive abilities. Within hours of birth, infants can recognize their mother's voice, having heard it muffled through the womb walls for months. They prefer human faces to other visual stimuli, and they can imitate facial expressions, sticking out their tongue if you stick out yours. This imitation suggests that even newborns have some understanding that other beings are like themselves. During the first year of life, babies' brains develop at an astonishing pace. They learn to distinguish the sounds of their native language from other languages, becoming increasingly attuned to the specific phonemes they hear regularly while losing the ability to discriminate sounds they don't encounter. By 6 months, babies start babbling, practicing the sounds they'll need for speech. By their first birthday, most can say a word or two and understand dozens more. But language is just one aspect of infant intelligence. Babies are constantly conducting experiments on the world. When a 6-month-old repeatedly drops a toy from their high chair, they're not being annoying. They're investigating cause and effect, gravity, and object permanence. Each drop is a test. Does it always fall? Does it make a sound? Does it come back if I cry? This is scientific reasoning in its most fundamental form. Object permanence, the understanding that objects continue to exist even when you can't see them, develops gradually during the first year. Young infants act as if objects that disappear cease to exist. But by 8 to 12 months, babies understand that hidden objects are still there and will search for them. This cognitive milestone represents a major advance in understanding the nature of reality. Childhood is a period of explosive cognitive growth across all domains. Language abilities blossom, going from single words to complex sentences within just a few years. A typical 6-year-old knows several thousand words and can use complex grammar, even though they've never been explicitly taught the rules. This rapid language acquisition suggests that human brains are specifically evolved for language learning, with innate structures that make picking up grammatical patterns almost automatic during early childhood. Critical periods play an important role in childhood development. These are windows of time when the brain is especially plastic and receptive to certain types of learning. The critical period for language is well documented. Children can acquire a second language much more easily than adults, achieving native-like fluency if exposed before puberty. Visual development also has critical periods. If a child has a lazy eye that isn't corrected early, the brain may permanently ignore input from that eye, leading to amblyopia, a condition where vision in one eye is impaired not because of problems with the eye itself but because of how the brain processes visual information. Play is the work of childhood, and it's crucial for cognitive development. Through play, children learn to regulate their emotions, take the perspectives of others, negotiate rules, and solve problems creatively. Pretend play, which peaks around age 4, helps children develop abstract thinking and understand the difference between appearance and reality. When a child pretends a banana is a telephone, they're demonstrating the ability to represent one thing with another, a cognitive skill that underlies language, mathematics, and symbolic thought. Theory of mind, the understanding that other people have their own thoughts, beliefs, and feelings that may differ from your own, typically develops around age 4. Before this, young children tend to assume that everyone knows what they know. The classic test for theory of mind is the false belief task. A child watches as a toy is hidden in a box. Then another person who wasn't watching enters the room. The child is asked where the newcomer will look for the toy. Children under 4 typically say the newcomer will look where the toy actually is, unable to understand that the newcomer has a false belief about the toy's location. But by age 4 or 5, most children grasp that people can have beliefs that don't match reality. Adolescence brings dramatic changes to the brain, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for judgment, impulse control, and planning. During puberty, the brain undergoes a second wave of synaptic growth followed by pruning. Connections that are frequently used become faster and more efficient, while unused connections are eliminated. This sculpting of neural circuitry is influenced by how teens spend their time. Practicing music, playing sports, studying, or using substances all shape which neural pathways are strengthened and which are pruned away. The prefrontal cortex is one of the last brain regions to fully mature, with development continuing into the mid-20s. This delayed maturation explains many characteristics of adolescent behavior: the risk-taking, the emotional intensity, the focus on peer relationships. The emotional centers of the brain, particularly the limbic system, mature earlier than the prefrontal control systems. This means teenagers feel emotions intensely but don't yet have fully developed systems for regulating those emotions and inhibiting impulses. But adolescence isn't just a time of risk and storm. It's also a period of remarkable cognitive development. Abstract thinking capabilities flourish during the teenage years. Adolescents can reason about hypothetical situations, consider multiple perspectives simultaneously, and engage in metacognition, thinking about their own thinking. These abilities open new intellectual horizons and allow teens to grapple with complex ideas in philosophy, science, and social issues. Adult intelligence is different from childhood or adolescent intelligence. Processing speed starts to decline in the 20s, but this loss is more than compensated for by increases in knowledge and expertise. The accumulation of experience allows adults to recognize patterns quickly, make better decisions, and solve problems in their domains of expertise with remarkable efficiency. An experienced doctor can diagnose a condition in seconds that would take a medical student hours of careful reasoning. This isn't magic. It's the power of extensive, well-organized knowledge. Expertise develops through years of deliberate practice, focused effort aimed at improving performance. Studies of experts in diverse fields, chess, music, medicine, athletics, show that expertise requires about 10,000 hours of practice, roughly 10 years of committed work. But it's not just time, it's how you practice. Experts engage in what psychologists call deliberate practice, constantly pushing themselves just beyond their current abilities, receiving feedback and correcting mistakes. This kind of practice drives neuroplasticity, gradually building the neural networks that underlie expert performance. As adults enter middle age, some cognitive abilities begin to decline while others continue to improve. Processing speed slows, working memory capacity decreases slightly, and it becomes harder to learn certain types of new information, particularly information that doesn't connect well to existing knowledge. Multitasking becomes more difficult. But these declines are often barely noticeable in daily life because adults compensate through experience and wisdom. Wisdom, that elusive quality we associate with older adults, involves several components. It includes emotional regulation, the ability to maintain equanimity in the face of stress. It involves recognition of uncertainty and the limits of knowledge. It requires considering multiple perspectives and balancing different values. Research suggests that wisdom doesn't automatically come with age, but older adults who've reflected deeply on their experiences, maintained openness to new ideas, and engaged with diverse people and viewpoints are more likely to develop this valued quality. Cognitive aging in later life is highly variable. Some people show significant cognitive decline, while others maintain sharp minds into their 90s and beyond. Longitudinal studies reveal that education, physical activity, social engagement, and intellectual stimulation all support cognitive health in aging. The concept of cognitive reserve suggests that people who've built strong neural networks through education and mental challenges have a buffer against age-related decline. They may be able to tolerate more brain pathology before showing symptoms because they have more neural resources to draw on. Importantly, certain cognitive abilities remain stable or even improve with age. Vocabulary and general knowledge continue to grow throughout life. Emotional regulation often improves. Older adults typically experience more positive emotions and fewer negative emotions than younger adults. Automatic processes, habits, and procedural memories remain largely intact, which is why older adults can continue to perform familiar tasks skillfully even if learning new tasks becomes more challenging. Neuroplasticity, while diminished in old age, never disappears entirely. Older adults can still learn new skills, form new memories, and benefit from cognitive training. The brain retains the ability to form new neurons in the hippocampus even in old age, though at a reduced rate. Physical exercise, particularly aerobic exercise, can actually increase hippocampal volume in older adults, improving memory function. Mental stimulation, learning new skills, maintaining social connections, and staying physically active all support brain health and cognitive function throughout the lifespan. The trajectory of intelligence across life isn't a simple story of growth followed by decline. It's a complex pattern of changes with different abilities peaking at different times. Fluid intelligence peaks in young adulthood, while crystallized intelligence continues to accumulate. Processing speed declines, but knowledge deepens. We lose some mental quickness but gain experience, perspective, and often wisdom. Each stage of life brings its own forms of intelligence, its own way of engaging with the world. As you rest here on the edge of sleep, consider your own cognitive journey. Every experience you've had, every skill you've learned, every person you've known has shaped your brain and contributed to your intelligence. The child you were, the adult you are, the person you're becoming, all are part of an ongoing process of development that continues as long as you live. Intelligence isn't a fixed quantity you possess. It's a dynamic, ever-changing capacity that grows through use and adapts to your needs. Trust in your brain's ability to continue learning, growing, and adapting. Let this thought comfort you as you drift deeper into sleep. Artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, as your mind grows quieter and your thoughts begin to dissolve, let's contemplate a different form of intelligence. One that humans have created, modeled on our own cognitive processes but operating in fundamentally different ways. Artificial intelligence has evolved from science fiction dream to everyday reality, and understanding its journey helps us appreciate both its capabilities and its profound differences from biological intelligence. The dream of artificial intelligence began long before computers existed. In Greek mythology, Hephaestus created mechanical servants to assist him. In the Middle Ages, scholars imagined mechanical men and thinking machines. But AI as a scientific discipline began in the 1940s and 50s, when the first electronic computers were being developed. In 1943, neuroscientist Warren McCulloch and logician Walter Pitts created a mathematical model of an artificial neuron. Their model showed how networks of these artificial neurons could, in theory, compute any logical function. This was the first suggestion that intelligent computation might be possible using simple units connected in networks, mimicking the structure of biological brains. The term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 at a conference at Dartmouth College. The organizers, including John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, and Claude Shannon, were remarkably optimistic about how quickly human-level AI could be achieved. They believed that significant progress could be made in just a summer. While that prediction proved wildly over-optimistic, the conference launched AI as a field of research. Early AI research focused on rule-based systems and symbolic reasoning. Researchers programmed computers with explicit rules and logical operations, trying to capture human knowledge in if-then statements. This approach worked for some narrow domains, like playing chess or solving algebraic equations, but proved inadequate for tasks that humans perform effortlessly but struggle to articulate rules for, like recognizing faces or understanding language. Neural networks, a different approach inspired by the brain's structure, were developed in parallel. In 1958, psychologist Frank Rosenblatt created the perceptron, one of the first implemented artificial neural networks. The perceptron was a simple system that could learn to classify inputs into categories. It generated enormous enthusiasm, with some predicting it would soon be able to walk, talk, and even become conscious. But in 1969, Marvin Minsky and Seymour Papert published a book demonstrating the limitations of simple perceptrons. They showed that perceptrons couldn't solve certain types of problems without adding complexity. This had a chilling effect on neural network research. Funding dried up and attention shifted to other AI approaches. This period, from the late 1970s through the 1980s, is sometimes called the AI winter, a time when progress stalled and enthusiasm waned. However, by the 1980s, researchers had developed algorithms that allowed more complex neural networks with multiple layers to learn effectively. The key breakthrough was backpropagation, a method for training networks by propagating error signals backward through the network's layers, adjusting connections to reduce mistakes. This made it possible to train networks with hidden layers, greatly expanding their computational power. Still, neural networks remained a niche approach through the 1990s and early 2000s. Computers weren't powerful enough to train large networks, and there wasn't enough data available to train them on. The AI field instead focused on other techniques like support vector machines, decision trees, and statistical methods. The modern era of artificial intelligence began around 2012 with the development of deep learning, neural networks with many layers, trained on massive datasets using powerful graphics processing units. The breakthrough came at an image recognition competition called ImageNet, a deep neural network called AlexNet, created by Alex Krizhevsky, Ilya Sutskever, and Geoffrey Hinton, won the competition by a huge margin, achieving error rates far lower than previous methods. This success demonstrated that deep learning could tackle complex perceptual tasks that had long been considered uniquely human. The key factors that enabled deep learning success were computational power, data, and algorithmic improvements. Graphics processing units, originally designed for rendering video game graphics, turned out to be perfect for the parallel computations required by neural networks. They could train networks hundreds of times faster than traditional processors. At the same time, the internet had created enormous datasets, billions of images, text documents, and videos that could be used to train these networks. And researchers had developed new training techniques like dropout and batch normalization that made training large networks more stable and effective. How do neural networks work? At a basic level, they're systems of interconnected artificial neurons or nodes organized in layers. Each connection has a weight that determines how much influence one neuron has on another. When the network receives an input, say an image, it processes that input through multiple layers, with each layer extracting increasingly abstract features. The first layers might detect edges and colors. Middle layers might detect textures and shapes. Deeper layers might recognize objects and scenes. During training, the network makes predictions and compares them to the correct answers. The error between the prediction and the correct answer is used to adjust the connection weights, making the network slightly better at the task. This process repeats millions of times, with the network gradually learning to recognize patterns in the data. It's a form of learning from examples, quite different from being explicitly programmed with rules. Modern machine learning systems excel at specific tasks. They can recognize faces more accurately than humans, diagnose certain diseases from medical images, translate between languages, generate realistic images and videos, play complex games like Go and poker at superhuman levels, and even generate remarkably coherent text. The AI assistant helping you right now uses these techniques, predicting the most likely next words based on patterns learned from vast amounts of text. But AI has significant limitations. Current systems are narrow. They excel at specific tasks but can't generalize the way humans do. An AI that plays chess brilliantly has no understanding of the game's meaning or strategy that could transfer to other domains. It's fundamentally different from human intelligence, which is remarkably general and flexible. When you learn to ride a bicycle, that experience helps you in countless other contexts, understanding balance, predicting momentum, coordinating complex movements. AI systems don't make these kinds of broad generalizations. AI also lacks understanding in a deep sense. When an AI generates text about elephants, it's not drawing on any internal experience or concept of what an elephant is. It's manipulating patterns in symbols based on statistical regularities in its training data. There's no evidence that current AI systems have consciousness, feelings, or genuine understanding of the content they process. They're extraordinarily sophisticated pattern-matching machines, but whether they think in any meaningful sense remains an open philosophical question. The training data AI systems learn from can embed human biases. If an AI is trained on text that contains stereotypes or prejudices, it will learn and potentially amplify those biases. If a facial recognition system is trained primarily on images of light-skinned faces, it will perform worse on darker-skinned faces. These issues raise important ethical questions about AI development and deployment. Current AI systems also require enormous amounts of energy and computational resources. Training a large language model can emit as much carbon dioxide as several cars over their entire lifetimes. This environmental cost is a growing concern as AI systems become larger and more prevalent. Looking to the future, researchers are working on several exciting developments. Transfer learning aims to create AI systems that can apply knowledge learned in one domain to new domains, more like human intelligence. Reinforcement learning allows AI agents to learn through trial and error in environments, discovering strategies through experience rather than just learning from labeled data. Explainable AI seeks to make AI decision-making more transparent and interpretable, so humans can understand why an AI made a particular choice. Some researchers dream of artificial general intelligence, AI with human-like flexibility and understanding across all domains. But most experts believe we're still far from that goal, possibly decades or more. What we have now is narrow AI, incredibly powerful within specific domains but lacking the general adaptability of human intelligence. The relationship between human and artificial intelligence is likely to be collaborative rather than competitive. AI systems can augment human capabilities, handling routine tasks, processing vast amounts of data, and identifying patterns humans might miss. Humans provide context, judgment, creativity, and ethical reasoning that AI currently lacks. Together, they can accomplish things neither could alone. As you rest in this liminal space between waking and sleeping, imagine the vast differences between your consciousness and the statistical patterns in an AI. Your experience of the world, the redness of red, the feeling of comfort, the meaning behind words, these are utterly unlike what happens in a neural network's computations. Yet both forms of intelligence process information, solve problems, and create order from complexity. They represent different solutions to the challenge of making sense of a complex world. One evolved over billions of years, the other engineered over decades. Both are remarkable in their own ways. The mysteries intelligence helps us solve. The various forms of intelligence we possess work together to help us unravel the mysteries of the world and of our own existence. Each type of intelligence, mathematical, linguistic, spatial, musical, and even intuitive, contributes to our ability to understand, create, and navigate reality. Let's explore how these different forms of intelligence manifest and what they reveal about the nature of mind. Mathematical intelligence is the capacity to think logically, recognize patterns, and work with abstract symbols. It's what allows you to balance your checkbook, estimate whether you have enough time to run an errand, and understand that 2 + 2 = 4. But at its highest levels, mathematical intelligence reveals deep truths about the structure of reality itself. Mathematics is often called the language of the universe because it describes patterns that exist independently of human minds. The Fibonacci sequence appears in the spiral of shells, the branching of trees, and the arrangement of flower petals. The mathematical constant pi emerges in circles, waves, and probability distributions. These patterns weren't invented by humans. They were discovered. This suggests that mathematics taps into something fundamental about the nature of reality. The brain's capacity for mathematical thinking involves several regions. The intraparietal sulcus, a groove in the parietal lobe, appears to be especially important for numerical cognition. Even babies only a few months old can distinguish between different quantities, suggesting that some aspects of mathematical ability are innate. We seem to have an inborn number sense, an approximate understanding of quantity that predates language or formal education. But mathematical expertise also depends heavily on learning and practice. The symbolic manipulation of numbers, algebraic reasoning, and formal proof require years of training that shapes brain structure. Brain imaging studies show that expert mathematicians show different patterns of brain activity when solving problems compared to novices. They've built efficient neural networks for mathematical thinking through years of practice. Linguistic intelligence encompasses not just vocabulary and grammar, but the ability to use language creatively, persuasively, and expressively. Language is humanity's greatest invention, Or perhaps it's more accurate to say language invented us, shaping how we think and perceive the world. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis suggests that the language you speak influences how you think. While the strong version of this hypothesis, that language completely determines thought, has been largely rejected, there's evidence for a weaker version. Speakers of languages without spatial terms like left and right, instead using absolute directions like north and south, develop different spatial reasoning abilities. They maintain constant awareness of cardinal directions in a way most English speakers don't. The way languages carve up color space differs. Some languages have many color words, making fine distinctions between shades. Others have only a few basic color terms. Speakers of languages with more color words can distinguish colors more quickly and accurately, suggesting that linguistic categories influence perception. Poetry and literature represent linguistic intelligence at its most refined. The poet carefully selects each word for its sound, meaning, and emotional resonance. Great writing creates experiences in the reader's mind, triggering emotions, sensory imagery, and insights. This power of language to shape consciousness is unique to humans. Spatial intelligence is the ability to visualize, manipulate, and reason about spatial relationships. It's what allows you to navigate through a city, pack a suitcase efficiently, or rotate a three-dimensional object in your mind. The parietal lobes, particularly in the right hemisphere, are crucial for spatial processing. Spatial intelligence varies considerably across individuals. Some people can effortlessly visualize complex three-dimensional structures and mentally rotate them. Others struggle with these tasks. This variation has practical implications. Spatial ability predicts success in fields like architecture, engineering, and surgery, where visualizing spatial relationships is crucial. Interestingly, spatial ability can be improved through training. Playing three-dimensional video games, practicing mental rotation tasks, and engaging in spatial activities like origami or model building all enhance spatial cognition. This demonstrates again the brain's plasticity and the malleability of intelligence. Navigation is a particularly interesting aspect of spatial intelligence. Some people have an excellent sense of direction, rarely getting lost even in unfamiliar places. Others struggle with navigation, constantly relying on GPS. These differences appear to be partly innate and partly learned. The hippocampus, which processes spatial memories, is larger in people who navigate more. London taxi drivers, who must memorize the city's labyrinthine street network, have enlarged hippocampi compared to other people. Animals rely heavily on spatial intelligence for survival. Migratory birds navigate thousands of miles, returning to the same nesting sites year after year. Sea turtles find their way back to the beaches where they hatch to lay their own eggs. Bees perform intricate dances that communicate the direction and distance to food sources. These navigational abilities represent sophisticated spatial processing. Musical intelligence involves sensitivity to pitch, rhythm, melody, and timbre. It includes the ability to produce, appreciate, and think about music. Music engages vast networks spanning much of the brain. Listening to music activates auditory regions, motor regions, emotional centers, and memory systems. Playing an instrument requires coordination between auditory, motor, and cognitive processes, making it one of the most complex activities the brain can perform. Learning music in childhood has been associated with enhanced cognitive abilities in other domains. Musical training appears to enhance auditory processing, attention, and even mathematical ability. The mechanisms aren't fully understood, but music training may strengthen general cognitive skills like pattern recognition, working memory, and executive function. Music also has profound emotional effects. Certain musical structures can reliably elicit emotions. Major keys sound happy. Minor keys sound sad. Dissonance creates tension. Music can trigger memories with remarkable vividness, transporting you back to specific moments in your life. For people with Alzheimer's disease, music from their past can penetrate the fog of memory loss, bringing moments of clarity and connection. The universal appeal of music across cultures suggests it serves important functions. Music facilitates social bonding, coordinating group activities, communicating emotions, and marking important life events. It may have evolved precisely because it strengthens social cohesion, helping groups work together more effectively. Then there's intuition, perhaps the most mysterious form of intelligence. Intuition is that feeling of knowing something without being able to articulate why. It's the gut feeling that something is right or wrong, the sudden insight that solves a problem, the sense that you should trust or distrust someone. Far from being mystical, intuition has a neurological basis. It arises from implicit learning, your brain recognizing patterns based on past experience without conscious awareness. Your brain has processed vast amounts of information and detected regularities in the world. When a new situation matches these learned patterns, you feel a sense of recognition or certainty, even if you can't consciously identify why. Expert intuition is particularly impressive. The experienced firefighter who senses danger and orders an evacuation moments before a building collapses. The master chess player who just knows the right move without extensive calculation. The veteran nurse who recognizes subtle signs that a patient is deteriorating before vital signs change. In each case, years of experience have trained pattern recognition systems that operate below conscious awareness. However, intuition isn't infallible. Our brains are also prone to biases and errors, seeing patterns that don't exist, making judgments based on superficial similarities, being influenced by irrelevant information. The key is knowing when to trust intuition and when to engage in more deliberate analysis. Balancing intuitive and analytical thinking is one of the hallmarks of wisdom. Some situations call for quick, intuitive decisions based on experience. Others require careful, methodical analysis. Knowing which approach to use requires metacognition, thinking about your own thinking, and that itself is a form of intelligence. All these forms of intelligence work together, helping us solve problems, create beauty, understand the world, and connect with others. They're not separate modules, but interconnected systems that influence and enhance each other. Learning mathematics can improve logical reasoning in other domains. Musical training enhances auditory processing. Spatial skills support scientific visualization. Language shapes thought. Each form of intelligence contributes to the rich, multifaceted experience of being human. As you sink deeper into rest, your brain integrates the experiences of the day, consolidating memories, strengthening useful connections, and preparing for tomorrow. All the forms of intelligence you possess are working even now, processing information below awareness, making sense of experiences, and maintaining the vast, complex network that is your mind. Trust in this process. Intelligence doesn't sleep. It transforms, reorganizes, and renews itself. Intelligence and consciousness. Now, in this deeply relaxed state between waking and sleeping, let's contemplate the deepest mystery of all, consciousness itself. Intelligence and consciousness are intimately related yet not identical. It's possible to imagine intelligent behavior without consciousness, and indeed, current AI systems seem to exhibit this. But what is consciousness, and what does it have to do with intelligence? Consciousness, in its simplest form, is subjective experience, what it feels like to be you. Philosophers call this phenomenal consciousness. There's something it's like to see red, to feel pain, to taste chocolate, to hear music. These experiences have a qualitative character, a felt quality that seems irreducible to physical description. This is the hard problem of consciousness, identified by philosopher David Chalmers. Even if we completely understood the brain's physical processes, would that explain why those processes feel like something? Neuroscience has made progress on what's called the easy problems of consciousness, explaining the mechanisms underlying attention, memory, perception, and other cognitive functions. We can increasingly map which brain activities correlate with conscious experiences. But why these activities produce subjective experience remains mysterious. One influential theory is the global workspace theory, proposed by Bernard Bars. According to this theory, consciousness arises when information becomes globally available across many brain systems. Most brain processing is unconscious, happening in specialized modules that work independently. But when information from these modules is broadcast to a global workspace, it becomes conscious. You become aware of it, can think about it, report it, and use it to guide behavior. Brain imaging supports this idea. When people consciously perceive something, there's widespread activation across many brain regions. When they process the same information without awareness. In cases of subliminal perception or inattention blindness, the activation is more localized. Consciousness seems to involve brain-wide integration of information. Another influential theory is integrated information theory, developed by Giulio Tononi. This mathematical theory proposes that consciousness arises from systems that have both high integration, many parts working together, and high differentiation, capable of many different states. The theory makes the surprising prediction that consciousness might not be unique to biological brains. Any system with the right kind of integrated information processing could be conscious to some degree. This would include some artificial systems and possibly even simple organisms. The relationship between consciousness and intelligence is complex. You can be conscious without being particularly intelligent. A baby is conscious but not very cognitively sophisticated. And as mentioned, you could imagine intelligent behavior without consciousness. An unconscious zombie that acts intelligently but has no inner life. But in practice, consciousness and intelligence seem to enhance each other. Consciousness allows for flexible, adaptive intelligence. When information is conscious, you can think about it in new ways, combine it with other knowledge, and use it to guide novel behaviors. Unconscious processing is fast and efficient but rigid. Consciousness brings flexibility at the cost of speed and processing capacity. Self-consciousness, awareness of yourself as a distinct entity, is another level of consciousness that not all conscious beings may possess. The classic test for self-awareness is the mirror test. Can an animal recognize itself in a mirror? Great apes, elephants, dolphins, and even some birds pass this test. They use mirrors to examine parts of their bodies they can't normally see, suggesting they understand that the reflection is themselves, not another individual. Self-consciousness enables metacognition, thinking about your own thoughts. You can monitor your own understanding, recognize when you're confused, and deliberately deploy strategies to solve problems. You can reflect on your memories, anticipate your future emotional states, and construct narratives about who you are. This ability to think about thinking is crucial for high-level intelligence. But consciousness isn't an all-or-nothing phenomenon. There are degrees and varieties of consciousness. The consciousness of a mouse is presumably simpler than human consciousness. During sleep, your consciousness is quite different from waking consciousness. Under anesthesia, you may have no consciousness at all, or perhaps only a dim, dreamlike awareness. Certain meditative states alter consciousness in specific ways, reducing the sense of self while heightening other aspects of awareness. The boundaries of consciousness are fuzzy. At what point in evolution did consciousness emerge? Are fish conscious? Insects? What about simpler organisms? We don't know. We can't directly observe another being's consciousness. We can only infer it from behavior, brain structure, and similarity to ourselves. This makes the distribution of consciousness across the tree of life uncertain. Some philosophers argue for panpsychism, the view that consciousness is a fundamental feature of the universe, present to some degree in all matter. On this view, even elementary particles might have some primitive form of experience. Complex consciousness, as we experience it, would arise from the combination and integration of these simpler conscious entities. This view remains speculative and controversial, but it's taken seriously by some neuroscientists and philosophers. The relationship between brain complexity and consciousness is clear but not simple. Larger brains with more neurons and more connections do seem to support richer conscious experiences. But organization matters as much as size. The human cortex is highly developed, with 6 layers of neurons organized into columns and networks. This organization supports complex information processing and integration. Damage to specific brain regions can impair or eliminate specific aspects of consciousness. Damage to visual cortex causes blindness. Damage to prefrontal cortex impairs self-awareness and executive control, showing that different brain regions contribute to different facets of conscious experience. Split-brain patients, who've had the connection between their brain's hemispheres severed to treat severe epilepsy, provide fascinating insights into consciousness. After the surgery, the 2 hemispheres can't communicate directly. Each hemisphere has access to different information. The left hemisphere sees the right visual field, controls the right hand, and usually handles language. The right hemisphere sees the left visual field, controls the left hand, and specializes in spatial processing. Remarkably, split-brain patients behave normally most of the time, but in carefully designed experiments, the 2 hemispheres seem to have separate conscious experiences. The right hemisphere might choose a different answer than the left hemisphere when asked the same question. This raises puzzling questions. Does a split-brain patient have one consciousness or two? The question doesn't have a clear answer, suggesting that consciousness might not be as unified as it seems. Consciousness plays a special role in intelligence precisely because it allows for integration. When you're conscious of information, you can bring it into relationship with other knowledge, examine it from multiple perspectives, and use it flexibly. Unconscious processing is fast and automatic but rigid. Consciousness trades speed for flexibility. This is why sleep, though it reduces consciousness, doesn't eliminate intelligence. During sleep, your brain continues processing, consolidating memories, solving problems, and preparing for the next day. Some people report solving problems in their sleep, waking with sudden insights. This suggests that intelligence can operate without full consciousness, at least for certain types of tasks. Dreams are particularly mysterious. During REM sleep, you experience vivid, often bizarre conscious experiences. Your brain is highly active, generating images, narratives, and emotions. Yet you're disconnected from external reality, and your prefrontal cortex, the region associated with logical thinking and reality testing, is less active. Dreams blend memory fragments in strange ways, creating surreal narratives that seem meaningful while you experience them but often nonsensical upon waking. Do dreams have a function? One theory is that they help process emotions, particularly negative emotions. Another theory suggests they consolidate memories, replaying and reorganizing the day's experiences. Yet another theory proposes that dreams are essentially meaningless, random neural activity that your brain tries to make sense of, generating stories from noise. We don't know which, if any, of these theories is correct. Dreams remain one of consciousness's great mysteries. As you hover on the edge of sleep right now, your consciousness is changing. Thoughts become more fluid, less controlled. Sensory information from the outside world fades. You might experience hypnagogic imagery, those dreamlike visions and sensations that occur in the transition to sleep. Your sense of time becomes distorted. Minutes might feel like seconds or vice versa. This altered state of consciousness is a natural part of the sleep cycle, a transformation that your brain knows how to navigate. Consciousness and intelligence together make you who you are. Your conscious experiences, accumulated over a lifetime, form your personal history. Your intelligence allows you to understand and navigate the world. Together, they create the unique perspective that is your mind, irreducible to any simple description, a mystery that contemplates itself. As you drift into sleep, consciousness doesn't disappear. It transforms, taking you into the strange, private world of dreams, where intelligence continues its work in ways we're only beginning to understand. As you lie here, suspended between waking and sleeping, your consciousness gently fading into rest, let these final thoughts comfort you. Intelligence, in all its forms, from the crow remembering your face to the tree sharing nutrients with its neighbors, from the infant learning their first words to the elder whose lifetime of experience guides their wisdom, from the octopus solving puzzles in the ocean depths to the neural networks processing information in computers. Intelligence is everywhere. It's a fundamental property of life, of matter organized in complex ways, of systems that sense, adapt, and respond to their environments. You are part of this vast network of intelligence, this beautiful web of minds and consciousness that spans the living world. Your own intelligence, shaped by your experiences and guided by your unique perspective, contributes something irreplaceable to the universe. Every thought you've had, every skill you've learned, every relationship you've built has changed you and changed the world in ways both large and small. Sleep now, knowing that your brain will continue its important work throughout the night. While you rest, your neural networks will consolidate memories, strengthen useful connections, clear away cellular waste, and prepare you for tomorrow. This is intelligence too. The quiet, automatic intelligence of biological systems maintaining themselves, restoring themselves, preparing for another day of experience. You are intelligence experiencing itself. You are consciousness aware of its own awareness. You are a small part of the universe's long journey toward complexity, organization, and understanding. And right now, you need nothing more than rest. Let go of any remaining thoughts. Feel your body growing heavier, sinking into perfect comfort. Your breathing slows, matching the gentle rhythm of your heartbeat. The boundaries between yourself and the world grow softer. Consciousness fades like stars at dawn. Sleep well. Dream peacefully. Know that you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. Intelligence rests and renews itself, preparing for the endless fascination of being alive, being aware, being you. And if you enjoyed this journey through the peaceful world of intelligence, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me create more content like this, exploring the fascinating intersections of science, consciousness, and the mystery of being. Sweet dreams, and until next time.